Good evening, everyone. Yang and Zhao back again for the first actually episode in November. It's been a couple weeks off after my campaign, Empire of the Undying Sun, which is closed out. However, if you are interested in a horror campaign for your Dungeons and Dragons need, both the 5th and AD&D 1E, you can just go to Kickstarter Empire of the Undying Sun 5E and 1E. We are taking late backers. Just some quick announcements before we get started. This weekend, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the Nerd Council of Doom assembles again. Myself, the Dungeon Delver and Dungeon Minister, we are coming back, and we will have the goods. We are talking about all sorts of fun things. We have basically the theme is what is wrong with people. We have the Uber driver who got fired because she took a picture of a guy who was naked in his house. We have angry letters or ignorant articles, rather, written by The Atlantic about Dungeons and Dragons. We have the failure of 2025's Running Man and what that means for the future of movies. And it ain't good. And then we'll have a few more fun topics as well. But tonight, I have an extra special guest. He is a man who has been a long-time lurker and participator in YouTube channels, a man who has decided to dip his toe into the world of comics, using a bit of classical literature to get himself started. And he is a friend to many channels. Our extra special guest tonight, DrMasque.
Yang Zhao, how are you?
Good.
Good.
And
I don't know if I can live up to that hype, but hey, thanks.
Well, and to anyone listening, we are going to announce the winner of the art contest for his book later on in the show. So stick around. Things will be good. So I guess my first question is, what turned you in from just a comic fan into saying, I really got to make my own book?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're a comic kid, like I was, which, I can just remember having comics for my whole life, you always want to do that comic,
Mm-hmm.
It's just, is it going to happen, and previously, it's like, can you go to the big two and some, send them a letter and pray, which, generally doesn't work. And early on, I realized I couldn't draw. So I decided maybe I could ink, because that doesn't seem as hard, when you're, not when you don't know anything. And I couldn't really do that either. And then I was like, well, maybe I could be a colorist. And then I realized I was colorblind. So I was like, well, so, ever since I got into high school, probably I knew I wanted to write. So, it's unfortunately, I never did anything with it really. I mean, I just write stuff and it just kind of sits there. So, the big thing that motivated me on this was three things. One is, I'm a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe, and I thought this would be a good way to start with a great writer and just a little bit of my writing and mostly his. And then the other thing was my son, who is a senior in high school now, has read no Poe in high school. And that makes me sad. So Um, he's reading Frankenstein now. He has read some other classic books, but no Poe. And also, um, I've seen some really, uh, one in particular, really horrible quote adaptation of Poe, which I'm like, I could do better than this. so, um, so yeah, those are the three big things on this. And I would like it to be maybe an entry point for younger, like I would say you could probably give this to like a teenager or whatever, you
Mhm.
know. Um, because it's Poe, but it's not. There's no nudity. It's not overly violent. So
Yeah. That so when I saw that it was Edgar Allan Poe, that really did make me wonder because I remember reading just a few stories in an American literature class in high school, but most. Let's see, are you up in Canada or
no,
just a? Oh, okay.
no,
I saw the
I
Blue
just happen
Jays.
to
Didn't
have the
know.
hat. I'm not even a Blue Jays fan. I just I like the hat. So
Okay, so most American high schools these days have totally gutted the vast majority of American literature. Uh, so I was really wondering, um, how uh, sort of why Poe, since most kids wouldn't recognize him anymore.
that's a good that's a good question. I mean, um, he's just my favorite writer. I mean, and I think you know I think it's easy. He's easier to get into than you would think. I mean,
Yeah.
he has some fairly short stories. Some of them. I mean, some of them are a little more, extensive,
Mhm.
um, but he's got, like the oval portrait is like 2 pages long. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good entry point, um, and it would be, um, a good way to help revive his name. You know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you are right. Even though he was what, like 1840s ish, 1830s, 1840s, which is almost 200 years ago now. It still isn't that hard to
Nope.
read. It's not like some other forms of like romance literature, which I mean, sort of comes a little later, but which is just so overly wordy. It's almost as bad as Shakespeare to try to get through. Whereas Poe is relatively simple. That and the fact that when you get into a more modern crop of American horror writers, which is still like 100 years ago, but like all of them really reference Poe in some way, or they're building on the work that he's done. So I definitely think it's an interesting choice, and I think in I mean, for me, it's a shame that maybe younger people have heard the name, but they really, or maybe they've just read The Raven.
Right.
Like if they've read anything, that's going to be it. But there was so much more that was fantastic and really set up authors later down the line
Yep.
that people who are into horror or even Americana should really consider reading some Poe.
Yeah. Fabrizio and I were talking about this on his show where he asked if H.P. Lovecraft had kind of surpassed Poe as far as like popularity, which I think is the case, at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, he was hugely influenced by Poe, so
Oh, absolutely. Especially in his earlier writings, uh, there was a lot of Poe. Lovecraft, I believe he did do a little bit of poetry as well, which um, it, people remember Poe for The Raven, but they forget he was such a prolific poet that he was either the first American or he still might be the only American who had a statue in Poets Corner back in
okay.
England.
That,
Um,
I didn't
so
know.
he, yeah, he was so popular that he, Like Americans were all country bumpkins to them, except for this Poe guy.
Yeah, he did struggle early on trying to sell poetry, but once the Raven hit, he was just kind of like a big celebrity after that.
Yeah.
So
Um, so how did you go? I mean, he does have quite a number of works. You're only doing one comic. There's only so many stories you can fit
exactly.
in there. How did you go about trying to decide what should go in it and what to leave on the
Yeah,
floor?
well, I th- I don't want to say I didn't put any thought into it. I I think the main thing was like I'm like, okay, I know Cask of Amontillado is going to be in it. I know Mask of the Red Death is
Hmm.
going to be in it because those are two of my favorites. So, and it's my
Yeah.
book. Um, so, and then after that, there's a lot of them I like, I love, and it, I don't know if it really mattered to me. Um, what I did a
Hmm.
lot was I would find an artist that I liked. Like before I even started the project, there was 5 or 6 artists that I'm like, I definitely want them to do something in this book. And so I would go to the artist and say, "Hey, I'm working on this Edgar Allan Poe book. Um, would you be interested? This is what I'm doing." I would explain, how it was going to be formatted and everything. And it was basically you just need to draw one, you know, scene from
Hmm.
the story, and and a lot of them would come back and say, "Oh, well, that sounds really cool. I would like to do this story." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Unless it was something really off base that I was like doesn't
Hmm.
doesn't fit or whatever. But the only person I said no to was Rob Geronimo. Originally he wanted to do the Raven, and I'm like, "Well, the Raven's not going to be in this book." So the
Oh.
Raven, my plans are for the Raven to be in the next book. So, but but
Oh. Okay.
I felt like, and then maybe it's kind of like when you're a fan of a band, and you keep hearing "You Shook Me All Night Long" over and over on the radio, and you're like, God, I don't want to listen to that song again. Um, so I just didn't want to go with like the most famous one. So I'm like, we'll put it off till the next book, and take it from there. And the next one I plan on doing is called "The Dream Within a Dream." So I think that'll fit more with that anyway. So, but yeah, that's basically what I did was, I let the artist, if they had something particular they wanted to do, I'm like, I would make suggestions. Like, I love to talk about Fabrizio's story because he knows some Poe, and I said,
Hmm.
hey, this is what I'm doing. And then I guess I gave him a couple suggestions. One was the oval portrait. He read it, he loved it, and he wanted to do that. So I'm like, cool, and it turned out awesome.
Yeah. The oval portrait's not one that's coming up. That one that's ringing a bell for me. What is that one about?
Um, well, it starts off as you're following this. I can't remember exactly what he is, but he's traveling and he ends up at this old house or castle or whatever. And the intro isn't super important, but he gets into the room, he sees this portrait, and he starts reading the account of the portrait, which is basically um, this painter is married and he's painting his wife her portrait, and he's obsessed with making this portrait of her. You know, because she's so beautiful, and he wants to make this perfect portrait of her. And then as time goes on, the portrait gets more and more beautiful. His wife becomes weaker and weaker. You know, and then if you want me to, I guess I can spoil it. A couple hundred years
No.
old, right? But at the end, she dies. He finishes the portrait, and she dies.
Interesting. Do you know if that was written before?
Picture of Dorian Gray.
Yes, that's the one
I
I'm thinking
don't
of.
know.
Because that's like Dorian Gray in reverse. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. Makes you wonder a little bit.
I'm trying to remember when the oval portrait was done, but It was
If I hit the right
1850
button.
oval portrait was done.
1850. Okay, not too bad. Let's see. This doesn't look. There we go. That's what I want to do. You'd think I'd know the right button by now. But so for anyone who is interested, Edgar Allan Poe's Besprinkled with Scarlet is on Fund My Comic right now. And we still got 38 days to go, and you're about halfway there. So that's pretty good.
You're doing all right.
So I really like the all-star cast of artists
Me too.
that you got on this. So, since this is your first book, and you are working with you're the writer working with artists. Now I know you've sort of been around for many years, so I think you probably have some relation with many of the artists, at least, like, they know who you are, you know who they are. But how was it going from basically a comic fan to basically you have become the art director
Right.
for the book? How was that transition for you?
Yeah, I look at, well, and maybe it's this way with anybody that's doing this kind of stuff, but I just look at myself as a project manager, But I didn't have a hard time with the art so much, because I've been a fan of the art.
Mhm.
I've learned about the art form, about how good comics are made and how, but for years I spent my summers going to comic conventions, going to artists, getting sketches done, talking to the artist. Um, I'd drive my family nuts because we would go to a comic show and I would spend, I mean, you spend 30 minutes just talking to one guy, and it's just like, and as long as they're not kicking me out, I'm standing there talking to them. So,
Yeah.
I definitely, I felt like I kind of knew what I was doing in that. But there were definitely times
Oh, nice.
where uh, an artist would do something. Like, for example, the cover. I had a specific kind of thing I was
Mhm.
looking for on that cover, the cover A, and so he did 3 versions of it. That's Ricardo Jaime. He did 3 versions of it, and I picked one, and he's like, "Oh, I was really hoping you picked this other one because this is what I wanted to do." And I'm just like, "All right, well, just do that. I'll trust you." And it came
Mhm.
out amazing. So there were times where I'm just like, you
Yeah.
know what? You're the artist. I'll trust you. Some, like I said, I tried to get the artist on board to do something that they wanted to do, something they were passionate about.
Mhm.
Um, but there were some that was just like, either I had something really specific, like I'm like, hey, this is what I want, and they would tweak it or whatever, or they just they didn't know a lot about Poe. They didn't know a lot about his stories. So
Mhm.
it was like, okay, well, what do you think of this one? And I would give them the story if they wanted to read it, and whatever. I'd give them like basic information and reference and all that kind of stuff. But
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Sometimes it can be hard when you go from like fan, because fan's kind of like the artist is
yeah,
up here and you're down here. Um, Please don't get annoyed with me, sir. But when you're doing your own comic, you are responsible at the end of the day for the work. So sometimes it can be a little awkward, like, hey, that's not really what I had in mind, and
yeah,
but
I would say none of these guys that I worked with had any kind of ego. Like they're like, hey, is that's what you want? Sure, you know.
yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's really important is getting the right team. Um, where was it relatively easy to talk to everyone, or was there somebody like you had to sort of sleuth out how to get in contact with them, or like internet stalk them for a few
There's
months to?
guys I'm still trying to sleuth out. Uh, I like one of my favorite comic artists uh, is Tom Mandrake, who did He did the Spectre
Oh,
series. He's done a lot of Batman horror stuff, And dude, I sent that guy a message every which way I could think of, and I never got anything back from him. So I'm like, oh well, that's the way it goes.
I
But
know.
and then I met him in person years ago at a convention. He actually did a sketch for me. Super cool guy, but I guess he's just not a social media guy or whatever. But yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
guys that I've been like, I'd like to get him on board, but uh, yeah, like you said, sleuthing around trying to figure it out. But some guy, like I said, there was like 5 or 6 guys I would right off the bat that I knew I wanted, and most of those were on board. I think it's easier to get people on board because you're like, look, I need this one piece, and you're done, and they're
Yeah.
like, cool,
Yeah.
so there was one guy who I'd known for a very long time who I wanted to be on the book. I wanted him to do a particular piece, and it just didn't work out. So that's the way it goes. And some guys are just like, nah, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not interested or whatever, which is cool. That's fine. I know people are busy or
Yeah.
maybe that's not their project or whatever. It's just
Yeah. A- And I think, once you get to issue 2, I think it'll be a lot easier when people say, "Oh, okay, he's put something out," and they can look at the book and say, like, "Oh, well, this issue 1 had some pretty cool art." I want to be part of something that has cool
that's what I'm hoping.
art. So, you've got this one that you're putting out now. You've got issue 2 at least in mind. Are you thinking of, sort of um, splitting off at some point and doing like your own original stories, or are you gonna sort of I hate to say stick with classic literature, but like focus more on that?
So my plan to explain this book, and you know, the best I've come up with so far is like illustrated narrative because it's a comic book.
Hmm.
The first page and the last page are sequential comic book pages. Uh, the first
Hmm.
page is an intro. Dr. Mask introduces you to the book. It's not just him standing there talking. There's some stuff that goes on. Um,
Hmm.
but um, so it introduces you to him. You find out kind of who he is, where he lives. There you see him there in his library. He's got this library that has like all these uh, books that most people don't have. Um, rare books, um,
Hmm.
and he'll pretty much let anybody come in and look at his books as long as they can find where he is, as long as they can figure out how to get to where he is. So, um, and you find out that you find out he has a raven friend called Thule, and that's pretty much it for. And you find out he likes to wear disguises, and that's pretty much all you find out in this issue. The next issue, I've already got planned. It's going to be 8 pages instead of 2, so it'll be like a 4 page.
Okay.
Sorry, the Jets just scored. um, so it'll be 4 pages in the beginning and 4 pages at the end, which will be one story, and it'll still have the post stuff. My plan is to do 3 issues of that. What I would like to do at the end is, as I'm writing these smaller stories, is to pull characters from those stories and then assemble them into another book.
Oh, nice. Um, so we are just a few weeks past Halloween, but it seems like you have a keen interest in horror. What is it about horror that sort of um, gets you going, that really grabs your attention?
I guess it's just being scared, or being like
Hmm.
things that you don't quite know what's going on, you don't understand, or it's just it's like weird conspiracy theories too. I love that stuff too. You're like, well, is that
Yeah.
true? Could it be true? Um, but yeah, it's just the adrenaline, I don't know. I can't explain it really. I mean, it's just and it's really peaked. You know, like you go through your life and your life ebbs and flows. You know, and you're like, I like that. Like I love like I'm sitting in a Batman room. Okay, I love Batman, but
Mhm.
I've kind of gotten to where I really don't feel like reading superhero comics anymore. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
mostly I read horror or other genres, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's super interesting. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's long been one of the biggest problems with American comics is, you know, for the most part superhero comics are like good when you're a teenager, but at some point you really need something to step it up into something a little more adult fare, which we never really had, except for like the deep independent stuff of like the 70s and 80s, which tended towards porn, which is not necessarily the direction you want to go. um, but I mean, I think that's one reason why manga is so pervasive is you have stuff for 5-year-old 6-year-old and all the way through adult. There's always something for you, whereas like people wonder why most kids like dipped out of comics by 15. It's like, well, what are they going to read? How many times can Superman stop bank robbers?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking back. I think it was the first real horror I remember, other than like House of Mystery and things like that, was
Mhm.
Twisted Tales. You know, I don't know if you've ever read that.
Twisted
Put out
Tales?
it was
No, I
put out
don't
by
remember that
Eclipse
one.
Comics, and that was where I first ran into my
Oh,
first nudity in comics. Eh, you know, it just graphic, bloody uh, things, but
hmm. Uh, Fine for me. More. Of course, graphic violence and nudity is like, par for the course for like later
yeah,
teens.
yeah, yeah.
Like maybe a 16 to 19, 20. And then maybe like I've seen France. They have like noir comics, like detective comics or stuff like that. Like especially women are more interested in those
Okay.
genres. Um, and yeah, like in the U.S. we used to have all sorts of romance comics, westerns, war, historical fantasy, and except for maybe like Conan, like none of that really
Yep.
survived. It pretty much all of it got obliterated in the
Yeah.
'80s,
Yeah, it's awful.
and which is why they lost women because there was plenty of stuff for women
Yeah, I
before that.
mean, romance comics were huge. There's lots of other. I mean,
Yep.
funny animal comics. All that. If you
Hmm.
follow me on Twitter, or if anybody wants to, I post a comic book cover a day, and generally it's something from the golden age. It's just amazing,
Hmm.
and some of the stuff that I'm posting, I'm like, this is the first time I'm seeing it too. It's like, wow, that's really cool. So
Yeah, it's amazing how much got lost over the years. And I kind of wonder in some ways if someone were to buy up the rights, especially to like a lot of the defunct comic companies and like repackage them in like trade paperback or graphic novel size. It makes me wonder if some of that would be sellable. Like yeah, some would be kind of dated.
yep.
Like you can't have like 1950s, oh, I'm 19 and no man wants me, I'm going to be an old maid, like that wouldn't really work today.
the
But there's stuff in
Yeah,
there.
the old romance, you you laugh about it, but uh I know guys that pick I mean, I pick them up once in a while too if I see them like in a dollar box or something, and even if you just want to laugh at them, you know, I mean,
Hmm.
but some like especially if you follow Marcus Kelligrew on X, he posts a romance cover a
Yep.
day, and some of the art is
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, it's interesting because if you really look into it and you look at who is doing a lot of those romance covers, that really became the Marvel and DC house styles in the late '70s and
Hmm.
early '80s. So it's weird. I don't know why they all came from romance or why that style was like more realistic. Maybe because you had to be a little bit more realistic for romance comics.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah,
I'm not
I
quite
don't.
sure.
I mean, and I don't want to typecast anybody, but I mean, I would think maybe women wouldn't be, wouldn't want to like a giant fist, like that in their comic, rather, you know, they probably would want it more
Eh,
realistic, but you know,
Different
right,
implications,
right.
yeah. Um, yeah, that's true. But I mean, even like Superman and what they were doing with Batman and Robin at the time. I mean, those stories were pretty cartoony, so it
Hmm.
made
Yep,
sense. And I guess it's a way to differentiate yourself from like Betty and
yep.
Veronica. So maybe maybe that's why they did it. I don't know. Unfortunately, most of those guys aren't around anymore. But if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have gotten Art Adams. If we didn't get Art Adams, we wouldn't have gotten the Image
Yep,
style in the late '80s, early
yep.
'90s. So
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I was just thinking Archie is
yeah,
probably one of the better run comic companies. Because I mean, they've
yeah,
been going forever. They're still selling stuff, It's amazing.
that and they've been able to update with the times. Like it's really kind of surprising. There was like Archie meets the Punisher, and
Yep,
like Art. There was Archie and Batman, and I think they had an Archie and
they did have an
Predator
Archie and Predator.
series as well.
They had
And
Yeah, Archie and Predator, and
yeah,
there was
no,
like horror books and stuff, after Archie Afterlife, and
yeah, uh, and I mean, to me, that's kind of like, what I don't understand is like, how did Archie manage to do it, but Marvel and DC couldn't be flexible with their stuff like
well,
that.
one of the greatest things that Archie did was to put those little digests in supermarkets. I mean,
Yes.
they've been in there for what, 20 years, 30 years, maybe? I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, and that's to me that's another problem. I mean, it's nice that we have the direct market, which is you're selling directly to to the
Mhm.
fans, to people who are interested in your books. Um, but to me, it seems like a lot's missing, because how do people know what they like or if they don't like if they've never been introduced to something? So like those old spinner racks at the checkout lines were really important, because kids had to go buy it, and that's how they started getting
Right.
interested in the
Yeah.
stuff. So what, I don't know, where do you think comics are going? How do you think that we could improve it? How are we going to get back if we ever are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about that a lot. Um, you know, I just I think the days of, you know, spinner racks per se, or selling them at a newsstand or something. I think those days are gone. I think just selling magazines now is tough. Um,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I think the difference is kids are still attracted to the stuff. Like manga sells
Right.
just fine. So it could be stylistic, but at least for the younger kids, like this is speaking of baseball hats, this is something I noticed from the '90s. Is I've probably seen more bad baseball games than most people you will ever meet. And so in the 1930s, they had a baseball stadium in Cleveland, and it had 70,000 some seats. It was gigantic. We had crappy teams from 1958 until it's like 94, I think. Um, so it was very cheap to get tickets. Hot dog, you can get a hot dog and a drink for like a buck 50, which for the average person was not bad. So most people who like baseball, they could go several times
Yep.
a year, and they could bring their kids. You could get bleacher seats for $3. So for $12, you could bring your wife and two kids. Um, And then in the 90s, they built a new stadium. And then the new one was like 45,000 seats. So, 30,000 less. And all of a sudden, the prices went up. And then for a lot of people, you couldn't, maybe you could go once a month if you were lucky. And now they have the same stadium, but they reduced the seats from 45,000 to like 36,000. Just putting in like restaurants and crap, and like a kiddie playland and stuff. Like, I don't know why you need that. But if you want a halfway decent seat, it's like $150. So like maybe that's a birthday gift,
Right.
So you're talking about maybe once a year if you could afford that at all. And then at the same time, the games used to be broadcast on over-the-air TV stations, and then they put it all on cable where it's behind a
Yeah.
paywall. And not only is it not on regular cable, it's like on an extra pay. So guess what? The baseball viewership is plummeting because you have to get kids interested in it when they're young. Like you take your kids because you had a great time with your family and you want your kids to experience that. Your kids will grow up enjoying the sport, then they'll want to take their kids. And they cut that out the legs, and that's exactly what they did with comics. They stopped producing books for younger kids, and then they all wanted to age their stuff up. Like in the 90s is when a lot of it started. They got rid of all the different genres, so superhero comics only attract a certain amount. So like now that we're probably 2 generations of kids after the ones that really read comics regularly, where are you going to get the fans? Like once, I'm almost 50, and once people my age start dying off, if you don't somehow get those kids back, like get a future generation of
Right.
kids into it somehow,
Yep.
and their parents aren't going to be taking them to comic stores if they don't read comics. So, I don't know how we get back to having words and pictures important
Yeah.
again.
And I'd be interested to know how many kids or young adults read digital comics. If do they
Yeah.
prefer that? Do they like that? I don't know. But I think Michael Bancroft the other night was talking. I
Mhm.
can't remember who he's talking to now, but they were talking about different comics, new, independent comics, different formats. And this one company it's almost like a manga size, but it's on newsprint.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's a good sized book. It's like $10.
Mhm.
And, they call it their backpack book. And you can just throw it in your backpack.
Yeah.
It's not super heavy because it's on newsprint. And to me, that's a great idea because that's like making comics disposable again. I think part of the problem is we made everything collectible. All you're selling to is
Yep.
collectors. I would say, say I don't know what Batman's supposed to sell anymore. Say I bet you it sells like 50,000 copies or something a month. And I bet you 5,000 people maybe are reading it. It's just
Yeah.
you don't, if you don't have anybody reading it, then what's the point?
Yeah. And I can definitely see that there might be some generational differences. Like to me, it seems like people a lot of times, or the younger people that are kind of interested in comics, they want to wait for a
Mhm.
trade. Like they're not going to comic book stores on a weekly basis to get a pull list or anything. So yeah, I mean, definitely, I would love to see that more. I've had this theory, what I call a high-low theory. You need like a low, like you need the cheapest possible version of something. Um, like you were saying, disposable. Comics in the golden age were
Yep.
disposable. Comics in the silver age were disposable. They weren't really valuable as collector stuff until the late 70s and
Right.
80s. And those comic book stores really wouldn't have had a chance to develop if they didn't have that backlog of cheap disposable issues that now they could sell.
Yep.
So like, yeah, like a 6x9 all newsprint, even if it's black and white. Like, that sounds fantastic to me, just to get people in. And then when you have fans, you say, oh, do you want a color version? Do you want a large version? Oh, we'll give you, like an ash can in the
Yep.
back. We'll give you like special creator notes and stuff like that. And that's the premium. That's the high version. There's nothing wrong with selling those, but you're not going to be able to sell those if you don't have fans in the
Yep.
first place.
Yep. Well, I will. I mean, I go to, like I said, I go to a lot of these comic conventions. I've been doing it, probably seriously going to comic conventions since the early 90s, Um, and my first one might have been like in the late 80s. But just talking to guys, like I talked to one artist recently, and I was like, oh, I'm looking at his books, and they're like kind of manga size or whatever. I'm like, why do
Mhm.
what made you choose that format? He goes, because you know that's what kids buy, and I want to sell books. So
Yeah.
so that's,
Yeah.
he just, you have to adjust with the
Mhm.
with what's going on. So, and maybe that's
And
the answer.
I mean, that could be
Yeah.
part of it. Um, more volume and smaller size, lower
I
printing
mean,
cost.
how do we
Uh,
get a generation of kids to read giant Harry Potter books? You know,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
But the thing about Harry, that's a good question. But the thing about Harry Potter is, um, a lot of it was the Harry Potter books themselves were always available in bookstores. They were in regular libraries. Once there was a little bit of steam after that first
Hmm.
issue, but then they were also available in school
Yep.
libraries because schools were like, hell yeah, as long as they're
Yeah.
reading, who
Right.
cares? So I think that is part of the issue. Like, I would love to see be speckled or be sprinkled with blood uh, in school libraries. Like, to me, something that's I mean, assuming I haven't seen all the art, assuming the art is appropriate, age appropriate,
Yeah.
um,
That
you know,
I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to put it
well,
past the censors. But I mean, there's no nudity. There's, like I said, there's no
yeah,
extreme violence. I would equate it to, I don't even know. I mean, I'm thinking like it's not quite as tame as, like, House of Secrets, House of Mystery, because there is some blood and stuff.
yeah,
But it's not much more than that.
yeah. And I mean, if you're aiming at teenagers, anyways, like, to me, this is something that would, you know, allow them to at least like preview the
Hmm.
stories. And then if they're like, oh, hey, this is kind of cool, then that's when they would go check out Poe, because just just like baseball or comics, why would anyone read Poe if you don't know that you're into that kind of
Right.
thing? You know, you have to be introduced to Poe somewhere at some point, which is supposed to be, a school's job, but
Don't get me going.
I guess not in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, not to go on a tangent, but I don't know if it's last year or the year before, but uh, my son's teacher at school for English, every author had to be a woman.
Oh God.
I'm not saying there's
I
not good
mean,
women authors, but good God, do they all have to be? It's just,
like, look, they all didn't they pretty much all had to read Frankenstein, Mary Shelley?
yeah.
Like, were there really good women authors who wrote anything we give a shit about before
I
that?
don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. Um, oh. See, and then they wonder why boys don't
Right?
read. No teenage boy wants to listen to like talking about feelings and stuff. And even Frankenstein is like a little too much on the monster being emo because his daddy doesn't love him. You know what I'm saying?
I have I have
Um,
to admit, I'm just right now reading Frankenstein for the first time. So
oh, okay.
I
Well, you'll
yeah,
see.
because my it just so happened my son was reading it for school. I'm like, oh well, maybe we can, I'll read it and we can talk about it, So I started reading it. This is one of those books that's been on my list. Like I got to read this. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Hopefully,
Fabrizio
Fabrizio will
says
still
that
talk to me
hurts.
now.
No, I think it's me he's not going to talk to.
Maybe he won't talk
No,
to
but
either one of us. I don't know.
that's, it's so unfortunate. Like I do think that there's a lot of utility in like high school English classes, especially like you want them to read at least some of like classic English literature. Like I detest Shakespeare like nothing else, but I'm glad that I've read several of his plays, and that I will never do it again. I like his poetry though. But then even with American stuff, because at some point, assuming you're introduced to like reading stuff that you actually enjoy, you're going to find authors. Well, those authors have influences, right? And if you're reading, like if you get to Lovecraft or Howard, or even later authors, Michael Crichton or whatever, like they have influences, and you should sort of like go back through the chain of American literature. And I'm not saying you got to read every book, but like how many books are based on Moby Dick?
Right.
How how many books reference Hemingway? It's like you got to have a little knowledge.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I don't. I think that's the thing with me is that's another thing I loved about Poe was I discovered. First of all, I read very slowly for the most part, but then I discovered
Yeah.
long books. Just I'll read a few chapters and it'll sit on the shelf for a couple of weeks or something. So I was drawn to Poe. I was drawn to Ray Bradbury. Short. I mean, okay, I can get a cool story. It's only going to take me 20 minutes, a half an hour, and then I'm done. So I can move on to something else, like a comic book or something. But but yeah, so that's what drew me in. But if I hadn't been exposed to those, I wouldn't. Like I can't remember exactly when I read my first Poe, but it had to be at least junior high. You know,
Yeah.
and so I wouldn't be where we are right now if that hadn't happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and I'm not ups for Algernon or any of these things that women tend to gravitate more towards. And I think that young boys should be introduced to it, but it's got to be the other way too. All these classics, boys love, little boys especially. They love horror. They love scary things. And get some Irving, get some Poe.
Yep.
They need some adventure stories like Robinson Crusoe, that stuff up, and
Lord of the Flies.
yeah.
That's pretty scary.
That's true. How about some Edgar Rice Burroughs? Why can't we throw in okay, maybe Tarzan we wouldn't make it anymore, but well,
John Carter.
I was thinking John Carter until I suddenly remembered that like every race that he encounters is like a slave of some other race, and it's like, oh, okay, now I see why they wouldn't want John Carter. I'm sure he's got something that we could do, but
well, people got to stop being so fragile, and they're just words.
yeah, and you could always use that as like an excuse to talk about that kind of thing. Like, hey, this is pretty normal, but not cool. We should not do that, man.
Yep.
So the book itself, we've got 38 more days to go, which puts us around the end of the year, like around Christmas-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So when do you think after it closes out that it'll be in people's hands?
So my current plan is um, within a couple of weeks, I'm gonna start a Kickstarter.
Hmm.
We'll see. I was looking at how to do a Kickstarter. The some of the details on it. I'm like, oh my
Hmm.
lord, I'm getting a headache already. But
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
but anyway, um, so and then that would run for a month. So it would kind of overlap this by 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, and then once the Kickstarter's done, the book is already done. Other than once we get the person that won the art contest into the book,
Hmm.
then that'll be completed. I'll actually be shipping it off for some of it to be printed, and then at the end I'll have it. So I'm hoping the latest people will get this book is March.
Oh, well, that's not too bad. That actually sounds very reasonable. Uh, it's not, you know, and even if it's late, it to me it's still within like an acceptable margin of error.
Yeah, I
It's
like to
not
say everybody's been paid on this except me, so
and
that's fine with me at this point.
uh, and speaking of the winner of the art contest,
Yes, we
uh,
want to do that now.
yeah,
Do you? I can I can share my screen if you want to look at the entries.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's see what you got.
All right, let me try this. Hold on. Let's get it. Hopefully, I don't dox myself or something. Um, 1 second. Okay. All right. Select screen. How do I know which is which?
Um,
I'll just pick one. Hey, it's
yeah,
right. Okay.
nice. All right, here we go.
So here are the three entries.
Ooh,
Omer Glitch, who he actually did two. He just recently this one he got in just under the wire. Um, so he I guess he liked the character so much he decided to do two. So he also did this one.
very cool.
And I just want to say too that as not as being just a, I don't want to say just a writer, but it's not being an artist.
Hmm.
Um, it means a lot to me that people would take time, you know, to draw my character. Um, when they could be doing anything else.
Yeah.
So that to me that's amazing. Um,
Dang.
so this is Tarm Hell. That's his name on Twitter. I don't know what his real name is. Maybe he doesn't want me to know anyway at this point. But he'll have to let me know if he wins. Um, but yeah. So the contest, um, there was a few rules. One was obvious stuff, no AI art, no nudity, things like that.
Hmm.
Uh, the main thing was that it should be gothic horror, and it should include uh, DrMasque and Thule, his Raven. Um, and they don't have to be the focus of the piece, but they just needed to appear in it, which is the way it is in my book. Is that DrMasque is on every page, so as you're going through, it's
Very
almost
cool.
it's almost like a Where's Waldo type thing. But without further ado, uh, Tarmhell is going to be in the in my book.
Nice.
We There was me and two distinguished artists voted uh, on this because I didn't want to be completely responsible for it. Um, but yeah, I thought he captured the whole gothic horror thing very well, and he did an amazing job on this.
Yeah, that's a fantastic piece. It looks to me like you would have spent several $100s at least on that had you commissioned it.
I agree.
And that's not to knock the other two. I like the other two as well. I thought
Yep. Yep.
they worked pretty well, but that's a great piece right there.
Yep.
That
So,
actually looks like it would have been illustrated, like Dore or
yeah.
like during the 1800s.
Yeah. When I first saw it, that's what I said, Dory. It's like it looks like, yeah.
And I
So,
mean, let's be honest, if you're gonna work in somebody's style, like that's not a bad guy to pick.
right, for sure. But I will say, I don't know. I would say we haven't seen the last of Omar and his art. So
Nice.
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm not overly familiar with him, but I would be quite interested to see what he can do. Those are nice images.
Let's see.
Well, so congratulations to the winner, and so yeah, so. Mhm.
I was just going to say they're going to be the inside back cover of the book, and
Oh, nice.
they're going to get a copy of the book and probably some extra stuff. But apparently, and I don't know if you saw his response to the post on X, but he was like, "Damn, it's your show's on at 3 a.m. where I am." So
Yeah, I
tomorrow.
was trying to think like, okay, so he's in Eastern Europe, maybe, or
I don't know.
let's see if we did 8, 4 hours would have been
He's up.
UK. So, oh man, I don't know.
He's obviously not in the continental United States, so
Yes.
but it's all good. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Yeah. So, one more time for anyone who has not checked it out yet, Edgar Allan Poe's Besprinkled with Scarlet, which is a great title, by the way.
Thanks.
I like the some things you just get like a clear picture in your mind, and that makes me think of blood, all
Right.
sorts of blood.
Yep.
So if anybody hasn't checked it out, there is a link at the top of the chats, both on YouTube and Rumble. I know I threw it into X, and it should be in the descriptions, both on Rumble and YouTube, for anyone who wants to go check it out. You've got a little bit of time, but why wait? Why wait? Get in your Christmas shopping before Thanksgiving, so you don't have to worry about it later. So anything else we should know? Any big events coming up for you?
I think it's Tuesday night. I'm going to be on Death Metal Heroes channel.
Oh, very cool.
7:00. I've been wanting to get on his channel just because he's a metal guy. I'm a metal guy. Should be fun.
Yep.
So, and then December 4th is Comic Book Radio. So.
Oh, nice. Pete's always does a good show.
Yep. I'll feel like I have arrived once I get on his show.
Yep, that's the gold standard right there. All right. Then I think that might bring us to a close for tonight. So yeah, everybody go check out Besprinkled in Scarlet. All right. So everyone, good night. And I will see those of you who come over to at the Nerd Council of Doom on Saturday.